Hi everyone. In this video, I talk about multidimensional arrays. I start out with a two-dimensional array with the same dimension, then show it with different dimensions, and finally show how we can add more and more dimensions to arrays. Let's start out with a two-dimensional character array. So for every dimension that we have a set of square brackets. Now a single-dimensional array has a single set of square brackets. And if I want to have a two-dimensional array, I simply add another set of square brackets. This array here I name letters and I initialize it to a new character array. Now again, for every dimension, I have to specify the size in square brackets. What this will give me here is a two-dimensional array with each dimension having a length of 5. So the first dimension has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the indices, so length 5. And the second dimension has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 indices, so a length of 5. I left the characters here just single quotes. They're basically empty just as a placeholder. But this is kind of conceptually what we're getting, a matrix with 2 dimensions. Now in order to navigate this, I need 2 nested loops, one for the first dimension, one for the second dimension. And what I want to do here is I want to initialize it to the letters of the alphabet, starting at A all the way up here, then B, C, D, all the way to the end to Y. I only have 5 times 5. This fits best, so I leave the last letter of the alphabet out. I name this one X and this one Y. So these are my variables that I use. And these represent the current index for accessing the array. Now, since I want to initialize each element, I need a character called letter, and I initialize it to A. This will be the character I place in the first element here, in the first position. Next, I need a for loop, starting with x equals 0, x less than letters dot length, and x plus plus. This is the same like a single dimensional array. Now for the next dimension, I need another for loop. So the current for loop basically goes here vertical, starting at 0 all the way to 4. When x is 0, I want to iterate over this array. When it's 1, I want to iterate over this array. So for each index that I have in the first dimension, I want to access the elements in the second dimension. So I'd use a for loop. This one I call y equals 0, y less than. Now I could do letters.length, but the problem with letters.length is what happens if I update this to 7, for example. This would be longer, and my loop would always just consider the first 5 elements. It would not go beyond it. Or even worse, if I lower this dimension to 3, my loop would go beyond the first 3 elements and then throw an index out of bounds exception. So it's better to check for each array here, check the dimension. And the way I check the dimension is get the array. So give me the array at x. So when x is 0, this is the array I would be getting. And this is simply a single dimensional character array. Now, since I have an array, I can call .length on it. And this would give me the elements or the length of this row, if you will. Now I increment y. And now I can access the particular elements. So the way I access it is letters. This is my array. And for each dimension, I specify the index. So first dimension is x, second dimension is y. And I initialize this to letters, to letter. This is the letter I have up here. This is the A. Now leaving it like this would go through one by one, initialize everything to A. However, I want to increment the letter, so A, B, C, and so on. So I do a plus plus. This is the increment operator, postfix notation. So that means it reads the A, assigns it, then increments it to a b. And then next time I will read the b, after the assignment, it will increment it. So that's the operation after the fact of reading the value. Now, if I run this, it wouldn't give me any output. I could simply see I don't get any exception, so it should be working. Now the next thing I want to do is add a print method and print this array to the console. So here I would do print letters. I will use the IDE to create this for me. So this will have private static void print. I remove the comment. And here again, I have to loop over the array. So first dimension, x equals 0, x less than letters dot length, x plus plus. And then the second dimension, int y equals 0, y less than letters at x dot length, y plus plus. And what I do here is simply output print letters at x and at y. And I add a space to it. And then here I add a line break, a print line. So what this will do is when x is 0, it will give me the array here, the single dimensional arrays, then use y to iterate over, print out each of these characters with following a space, and then at the end, when it's done with this array, it's done with the inner loop, it adds a line break and goes to the next one. So let's run this again. And here we can see we get A, B, C, D, E, all the letters of the alphabet, all the way to Y. So this was a two-dimensional array. One way to view it is with 2 dimensions, simply as one thing. The other way to see it is we have a single dimensional array. So I cover this for a moment. So it's a single dimension here, an array of character arrays. So it's a single dimensional array, and this array has arrays of integers. So we really just have a dimension of x, and that's a single dimension. Now if we look at the element of each, it happens to be an array, and again a single dimensional array. That's another way to view it. And if you view it that way, sometimes it can be easier. We have a single loop here. For this loop, we want to get the elements, and here we get a single dimensional array back. So we kind of view one dimension at a time. Now let's move on and see how we can initialize it to different lengths. So the way what I want to do is basically create an array that looks like this. So we have 3 dimensions, and I create an integer array here. So 2 dimension, but the length is 3. And I call this array equal new int. This will be size 3. And the second dimension, I just don't specify. So I leave this blank. This creates an array of length 3, and the elements, each element is another array, which I have not initialized. So I know now I use a loop, I less than array dot length, I plus plus. And here I access the array at index I equal to, now I can initialize each element array. So new int equals I plus 2, for example. So when I here, this is my I rename this. So when I is 0, I initialize this array to I, which is 0 plus 2. So this will now have a length of 2. It increments I to 1. 1 is still less than the length of 3. For I with the index of 1, I have this element here. I initialize it to a new integer array of 1 plus 2, which is 3. And then I increment I again to 2. I have element 2, and this element is another array, which I create here. I initialize it to 2 plus 2, which is 4. And now, if I want to print this, I can use it the same way I did up here. So I do for int I equals 0, I less than array.length I plus plus. And here I have my second dimension. I just name this y equals 0, y less than array at I dot length y plus plus. And let's initialize this. I and y are my two dimensions. And let's do I plus y. This will be the value. Now, to save some time, I output it here as well. So output will be I and y with a space. Should be a print. And after that, I add a line break. Now this simply adds the two indices. So if I have 0, 0, this will be 0. 0 and 1, this will be 1. And this one again, 0 and 1 will be 1, 1 and 1 will be 2. So let's run this to get the full output. So here we have it. It's different dimension, first 2, then 3, and then 4. So this is an array that is not where the dimensions don't match up. And then having the inner dimension getting the array at each of these indices, so for example this one, and then for that individual array, again, getting the length of it. That's important when we have nested loops. Now, last, to finish this, we can create arrays of any objects with any dimension. So if I use int again, for every dimension, we add another set of square brackets. So here, if I have 5 dimensions, and I call this multidimensional, new int, I have to specify here all these dimensions. I just do 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So rarely you need this many dimensions. Usually the more dimension you add, the less likely you're going to need it. And maybe you have a better way of modeling your program. But this is what is possible, and this is how you add dimensions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.